Tata Nexon EV has been an absolute success. On the back of this, Tata Motors is the largest EV car maker in India with over 85% market share, and the Nexon family of SUVs is now one of the best-selling SUVs in India. So it was only a matter of time before we saw this, the Nexon EV Max, or the long-range version of the Tata Nexon EV. The Nexon EV Max has a larger 40.5 kWh battery pack, good for an ARAI range of 437 kilometers. The standard Nexon EV can do about 230 kilometers as per our tests, so we're hoping this one manages close to 300. There's also a new, more powerful 143 PS and 250 Nm motor, but you would have to look very hard to know that from the outside, since there's no Max badging anywhere, the only change being a new design for the alloy wheels and a dark teal paint option. So today, while we tell you what's different about the Nexon EV Max, we're also going to do a quick range test to see how far this EV actually goes in the real world. So like the outside, not much has changed on the inside of the Nexon EV Max, although you do get this nice teal and black look to this panel over here. And as for the changes, there is a new beige upholstery which looks quite premium, as well as ventilated seats for the front two passengers. But most of the changes are centered around here, this new console. And the most striking of these is this new gear selector knob, this dial, which has quite a striking display to it. And you notice that it changes the color according to the sport, eco or the city mode that you choose. Another change is this new selectable regen mode, which is quite useful, and we'll show you later how it works. And this electronic parking brake, as well as an auto hold function. Moving on, there's this new wireless charger, obviously a useful feature, although the touchscreen, which is the new sort of buttonless one that Tata has been putting in its cars, doesn't have wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, just a wired connection. But now you also get an air purifier in the cabin. There's also this IRVM, which is now automatic. But a drawback of this new layout is that there are no cup holders here anymore, which might be an issue for people on long drives. Generally, the cabin could have been more practical. There's just one USB port, surprising for a high-tech EV, and the front door pockets are too slim to hold any bottles. But there is a good list of features, since the Nexon EV Max is based on the top XZ Plus and XZ Lux variants of the Nexon EV, highlighted by more connected tech features, a sunroof, and auto headlamps and wipers. So Tata Motors has done quite a commendable job of packing in the larger battery. There's been no reduction in legroom or headroom, and there is a small hump in the floor, but which keeps you in a marginally knees-up position, but the nice backrest angle, the soft cushioning means that the rear seat is still a comfortable place to sit in. Even the boot is the same 350 litres. Most of the battery pack, the larger pack, has been packed in by making underlying changes to the structure so that the cabin space isn't hampered. Now the improvements that Tata Motors has made with the more powerful motor and the reworked battery management system is immediately apparent once you start moving in the Nexon EV Max. Unlike in the regular Nexon EV, the Eco mode here is perfectly usable as a daily driver. Progress is seamless, you have this calm, sort of smooth power delivery without any of the laboured feeling of the earlier car. And this mode might just be the only one you need. And of course, it ramps up in city mode, but aside from that little bit more energy in the way the car moves, there's really not much else going for the city mode. And of course, changes have been made to the suspension to manage the heavier weight of this car. And to be honest, that hasn't really affected the largely, comforting ride quality that was always a positive with the Nexon EV. And you still have some amount of pitch and dive, as you would expect in an SUV. But again, it's not exactly uncomfortable, and progress is quite calming actually. In fact, outputs are identical in the city and sport mode at around 98 PS and 170 Nm, with only changes to the throttle response. This ramps up by a significant 47% in sport mode for the full output, but with a 13.1 second 0 to 100 kmph time in eco mode and the instant EV torque, this mode is a perfectly usable one. Now, a minor flaw in the earlier Nexon that hasn't been corrected is that the delays when you shift from, say, drive to neutral to reverse, that those delays are still present. The new shifter looks quite striking and makes using the dial easier, of course. And of course, you now have that park mode, which is something that should have always been there, is the useful addition. But more impressive are these now manually adjustable regen modes. And Tata has done well to tune this, because even in the highest regen mode, the highest of 4, the Nexon EV Max doesn't feel jerky or doesn't slow down abruptly. It's still a smooth, gradual deceleration. Although unlike Tata claims, this isn't a full one-pedal driving, and when you have to come to a complete halt, you have to press the physical brakes. Now, to give you a sense of the real-world range of the Nexon EV Max, earlier when I was speaking to you, we did about 31 kilometers in city traffic, and the average consumption was about 147 watt-hours per kilometer. We'll show you the converted figure below. And this was with no concessions made to the fact that this is an EV. So we were switching through the modes, doing some heavy driving. The AC was at full blast because of how hot it is in Bombay today. And now that we're on the highway, we've done about 17 kilometers. And the difference, it's only 167 watt-hours per kilometer now, the average consumption, is much less than what we've experienced earlier with the Nexon EV, the regular one. Which means that the claims that Tata Motors makes of reducing losses in the powertrain and the improving drag, those seem to have worked, and now the Nexon EV Max might be quite a good long distance car too if you have the necessary infrastructure where you're going. To explain further, the Nexon EV Max showed a city range of 275 kilometers and a highway range of 241 kilometers. But remember, this was with very heavy driving for our shoot and testing. The range indicator, which is fairly accurate, showed 342 kilometers of range on a full charge when we set off for the day. So Tata Motors' claim of a 300 kilometer real-world range seems accurate. More usefully, we didn't have to really change our driving style or deprive ourselves of the car's features in the Max. Something we had to do quite a lot of when we drove the standard Nexon EV. So now with the leeway that the Nexon EV Max gives you with its bigger battery, you might be tempted to use sport mode quite a bit, say out on the highway. And here the power delivery is genuinely quite exciting. The cars have leaped forward like now, and we're thankful that Tata Motors has finally added ESC, because that does make a difference in controlling this sudden, quite rapid surge of power. But we would have liked slightly better suspension tuning, in the sense that there is some torque steer and maybe a bit better tuning for the drivetrain in the sport mode, because sometimes when you hit the throttle, the car will still accelerate for a split second after you've let go of the accelerator, which can be a bit disconcerting for first-time EV drivers. These improvements have come via the iVBAC system, which reduces lost energy while braking, and the new power electronics that accompany the new motor. The Nexon EV Max feels reassuring while braking from high speeds, with the transition from the regen to the physical brakes quite natural. A new hill descent function has also been added that limits speeds to 6 kmph on downhill stretches via the newly added cruise control feature. And of course, out on the highway, the same quite steady, comfortable ride quality remains, and the steering is reasonably well weighted, if not fully precise. And there is some wind noise obviously, because the car itself is so quiet. And yeah, otherwise it's a safe, pretty direct driving experience, obviously helped by the 50-50 weight distribution and the low center of gravity. So body roll, of course, it's there, but it isn't too disconcerting. And if you drive like how you should drive an Nexon EV, it's quite a nice, soothing driving experience even out on the road. As for charging the Tata Nexon EV Max, DC fast charging speed has gone up to 50 kilowatt from 30 kilowatt, enough for a charging time of under an hour. The new 7.2 kilowatt AC charger, though an option, also makes for brisk home charging. topping up the battery fully in 6.5 hours. So despite the bigger battery, the Max now takes less time to charge than the standard Nexon EV. So should you pick the Nexon EV Max over the regular Nexon EV, especially with the 1,80,000 more roughly that this one costs, plus the 50,000 more if you want the faster AC charger? We think this is the one to get, especially if you do a lot of long distance trips, then it's a no-brainer. But even otherwise, say if you want a genuinely stress-free EV driving experience, then this does this much better than the regular Nexon EV. And then the added features, they might seem a small addition on paper, but they make you feel that the additional money that you're paying has actually gone somewhere other than the bits that you can't see, say in the range and so on. So we think this should be another successful EV from Tata Motors.